Anyone heard the tale of the boy with the melted face? People say he's still out there. Still roaming the hills, desperate to avenge his massacred family.
We are talking about Cannibal Farm, also known as Escape from Cannibal Farm. This one written and directed by Charlie Steeds and can be best described as a British Chainsaw Massacre meets The Hills Have Eyes. So the story focuses on a family as they decide they are going to hit the open road and go for a idyllic break in the country somewhere. So we have a kind of a mother with her kind of new kind of husband, a kind of 20 or so year old daughter, an 18-year-old boy, the daughter's boyfriend, and a kind of a young lad. So they kind of basically have this kind of large caravan, go around the country, decide they're going to leave their phones behind, etc. To get back to nature. And on the kind of their travels, they kind of go into this particular farm. And however, this farm has a dark past. It seems that there was a kind of a young lad who was tortured and brutally burnt by some bullies some years before, and he's kind of grown up to be a kind of Leatherface style chainsaw killer. And he's not alone either. There is a crazed father and also a seemingly larger conspiracy at work here as well. So what do we think of Cannibal Farm? If you are a fan of the Chainsaw Massacre movies, if you like The Hills Have Eyes, if you like general slasher movies in general, then this may be up your street. It is a very low budget film, so you do have to kind of adjust those expectations in regards to production value, but nonetheless I feel it is a pretty violent and grisly affair. So let's go into a little bit more detail of what works and what doesn't work with Cannibal Farm. We'll go through the negatives first of all. The biggest one for me here is some of the acting, and the acting here is very over the top by some of the performances, some of the characters here, very over the top. I mean, we are talking Tommy Wiseau levels of dramaticness here. It's actually goes to the point where it's so bad that it's good almost, really over the top and kind of super cheesy. There are, I mean, I think the kind of, I guess the main character who's this kind of like this daughter who's probably in her early 20s is probably the best actor of the bunch, and she is the kind of the main character. So I guess that's, you know, she's okay. And also the kind of the mother, I think, are quite good. But there are some really kind of like woeful performances here in regards to some of the other sort of characters. But I also have to say the dialogue is pretty ripe as well. I mean, this stuff, it feels like it was written down and it's something George Lucas would be proud of, but it really doesn't come across that well on screen and comes across as stuff people wouldn't really say. Let's just leave it at that, basically. So the acting, the dialogue isn't particularly good. And there are lots of things that kind of don't really make sense in regards to how physics work and how science works and how shotguns really work and things like that. So if you want to pick holes at a movie, various different kind of like little niggles here and there, you'll have a field day with this movie. The actual special effects, and they are low budget, and I can't really rag on it too much, but they do a kind of okay job, I think, with some of them. But there are some where you'll see someone, you know, get hit with a kind of an implement, and you'll just see a very thin spurt of blood go out. I mean, they don't go CGI blood here, which I guess is one thing, but the special effects are kind of on the kind of the cheaper side here. And I've got to say, I think the movie takes a little while to get going. Once you really kind of get to the kind of the bloodletting, I feel that the story kind of picks up and it becomes a little bit more interesting. But I don't know, it just kind of maybe has a little bit of a kind of a weak start to it. But what does work for me, the one thing I really liked about this film is the victims, the family, are pretty proactive. And they don't actually go into many of the tropes that you'll see a lot of kind of victims and kind of a lot of people in horror films kind of fall into. They actually try and be somewhat proactive and kind of try and take their kind of their fate into their own hands and try and use their noggin quite a bit. Was I was quite happy to see it, and it's kind of nice to see it in a kind of a low budget film, because I feel it's easy for these films to kind of knock out the kind of the cliches basically, and so it's kind of nice to see maybe characters out in somewhat of a kind of a more realistic manner, and actually try and think a little bit and kind of be a bit more like, you know, let's just make sure this guy's dead and things like that. So I'm always a big proponent of people acting realistically and how people would really act in films, and it's nice to see a film that does it in some ways. So that was good. And I was actually quite impressed with the way this film actually expands its mythology as the film goes through. So when we kind of first start, it seems like it's going to be a relatively kind of straightforward, you know, there's going to be a slasher at this farm or something. But we actually find out that there is kind of more to it than that, and that as the film progresses, you peel more layers off, and the film becomes more people are involved, and kind of the you know, the danger goes far beyond you can kind of like you could ever have thought in the beginning of the movie. So that I kind of appreciate, and it's kind of nice to see again the kind of the story here maybe being thought through quite well, and that was quite good. And on the, I mean, you know, I've mentioned the acting, but it is terrible. Let's just, you know, let's call it a spade. The acting is terrible, but it's kind of funny at the same time. It's so hokey. It goes beyond the point where it's just bad. It's kind of something you kind of enjoy at the same sort of time. And there are a couple of kind of fun effects here. There's a great scene where we have our victims are caught in these kind of like big cages and stuff, and they're electrified to prevent them getting out. There's a great guy. There's a great scene where one of the characters basically puts his hands on the electric fence. What they did there, I thought was actually quite fun. I thought it was quite good. The film is quite violent, and I feel that, you know, it does have some quite adult themes in regards to what's happening to these people. It doesn't show a lot on screen, and I've got a feeling that's less to do with trying to kind of be subversive, and the fact that they don't have the budget to show you skulls getting cracked in and stuff like that. So the violence, although is extreme, it's more implied than kind of graphic, if that makes sense. And I guess another thing really that maybe bothered me a little bit, kind of just going back into that, the whole cannibal thing, you never really see that. And considering it's obviously a big part of the title here, and I mean it's kind of it's inherent to the plot, but it's not something we really see. So that kind of bothered me. And it also has the slowest and most ridiculous oven, what do they call it? Incinerator in the world. You'll see, you understand what I mean when you say that. It's just like, what? Is that an incinerator? Is there something else going on there? It's a little bit silly. This film is silly and has loads of kind of plot holes, but it still is actually quite a fun movie nonetheless. If you like low budget kind of versions of like Wrong Turn and that kind of thing, you may want to get a kick out of it. If you ever seen the film Inbreds, which was a kind of another British kind of you know, countryside massacre type film, it's kind of similar to that. I think Inbreds was a little better, if I'm honest, but this is still worth a watch. I still actually kind of enjoyed it. I was engaged throughout this movie, despite its obvious shortcomings and its obviously maybe lack of experience in regard to some of the kind of the acting here and stuff like that. But nonetheless, I still had a good time with it. I'll give it actually probably a slightly above average for the budget of film that it kind of is. So 6 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.